The letter was lying on my pillow at noon, folded once, with my name written across the front in handwriting I recognized better than my own. Outside, sunlight spilled through the half-open curtains, warm and golden, touching every corner of the room except the empty side where my roommate's bed used to be. Her suitcase was gone. Her books were gone. Even the chipped blue mug she drank tea from every morning was gone. But that letter remained, silent and heavy, as if it had been waiting all day to break me. Before we begin, if you believe kindness can save a person, if you believe second chances can change a life, please like, comment, share this story, and subscribe to the channel Ancient Truth. Your support helps stories like this reach hearts that may need them most. My name is Saira, and for almost 2 years, I shared a small apartment with a girl named Noemi Vale. We were not best friends in the beginning. We were not even close. We were two strangers trying to survive the same expensive city, splitting rent, electricity, and silence. Our apartment was on the 4th floor of an old building with narrow stairs, faded green walls, and windows that looked down on a busy street where buses hissed, vendors shouted, and schoolchildren ran past in the afternoon sun. Noemi moved in on a bright Monday, carrying only 2 bags, a thin mattress, and a plant she called her peace lily, though it looked tired and half dead. She was quiet in a way that made people uncomfortable. She cooked late, cleaned early, and apologized for things that did not need apologies. If her spoon touched the sink too loudly, she whispered sorry. If she crossed the hallway while I was tying my shoes, she stepped back like she was in my way. At first, I thought she was strange. Then I thought she was cold. Later, I understood she was afraid of taking up space in a world that had taught her she did not deserve any. At that time, I was not easy to live with either. I had just lost my job at a design agency, though I told everyone I had resigned to pursue better opportunities. My mother was sick in another city, my savings were shrinking, and every morning I woke up with panic sitting on my chest like a stone. I smiled outside, but inside I was bitter. I hated seeing Noemi leave for work in her neatly ironed blouse while I stayed home refreshing job listings. I hated the smell of her tea because it meant another day had started without mercy. I hated how gentle she was because I had forgotten how to be gentle myself. One afternoon, in harsh daylight, everything broke over something small. I found crumbs on the kitchen counter and snapped. I said cruel things about how she lived like a ghost, how she made the place feel depressing, how I was tired of her sadness filling every room. She stood there holding a dish towel, her face pale, her eyes lowered. She did not argue. She only cleaned the counter, washed her cup, and went to her room. The door closed softly, and somehow that softness made me angrier than if she had slammed it. After that day, our apartment became colder. We shared walls, bills, and air, but not kindness. Then, one morning, I fainted in the hallway. It was close to midday, sunlight bright on the tiles, and I remember reaching for the railing before everything turned white. When I opened my eyes, Noemi was kneeling beside me, pressing a wet cloth to my forehead. She had missed work to take me to the clinic. She paid for my medicine before I could protest. She made rice soup and left it beside my bed without mentioning the ugly things I had said. That should have been the moment I changed, but pride is a stubborn disease. I thanked her weakly, then returned to my distance. Still, something shifted. I began noticing things. Noemi always left the last piece of bread for me. She turned the hallway light on before I came home from interviews. She lowered the television volume when she heard me crying behind my door, pretending not to hear so I could keep my dignity. Her kindness was not loud. It arrived quietly, like sunlight moving across a floor. Months passed. I found temporary work at a printing shop. My mother improved. Life became less sharp. Noemi and I began sharing small pieces of ourselves. Not conversations in the dramatic way movies show, but little truths left open in daylight. She told me she had grown up in foster homes. I told her I was terrified of failing. She told me she kept the peace lily because it had been given to her by a teacher who once said she would bloom again. I told her I had once wanted to paint murals. We were still careful with each other, but care itself had entered the apartment. Then came the envelope from the hospital. I found it on the kitchen table one afternoon, half hidden under a grocery receipt. Noemi snatched it away when she saw me looking, but not before I noticed the words oncology department. Her hands trembled. She smiled too quickly and said it was nothing. But after that, she grew thinner. She slept more. Some mornings, the tea went untouched. I wanted to ask, but I was afraid of pushing into a pain she had not offered me. The strangest thing was that she became kinder as she became weaker. She bought oranges and left them in a bowl because she said the room needed color. She taped a tiny note to the fridge reminding me of my interview. She watered the peace lily with such patience that, somehow, it began to bloom. One bright afternoon, while laundry moved in circles at the laundromat, she told me that some people spend their whole lives waiting for someone to choose them. She said it while watching sunlight flash on the washing machines, and I did not know what to say. I only sat beside her, feeling that something important was slipping through my fingers. 2 weeks later, she told me she was moving out. She said it casually, while folding towels near the window. She had found a place closer to work, she explained, though her voice did not sound convincing. I felt offended before I felt sad. I asked why she had not told me earlier. She smiled and said some goodbyes are easier when they are small. I pretended not to care. I helped her pack one box and then disappeared into my room because my chest hurt in a way I did not understand. On her last morning, the city was unusually bright. Daylight poured through everything. Noemi made tea, watered the peace lily, and cleaned the kitchen until it shone. I had an interview at noon, and when I left, she was standing by the window, the sun around her shoulders like a soft farewell. I said I would see her later, and she nodded. That was the last ordinary moment we ever had. When I returned, her bed was empty. The plant was gone. The room echoed. And on my pillow was the letter. My hands shook as I opened it. She had written that she was sorry for leaving without a proper goodbye, but if she had seen my face, she might not have been brave enough to go. She wrote that she was not moving closer to work. She was moving into a care home near the hospital because her illness had returned, worse this time. She had hidden it because she did not want pity to be the first real thing between us. Then she wrote the words that changed everything. Saira, you once told me I made the apartment feel depressing, but the truth is, this room saved my life. You were angry, yes, but you were alive. You fought the mornings. You cried and still got up. Watching you survive taught me to try one more day. I sat on the floor, the letter trembling in my lap, as the room blurred around me. She wrote that she had named me as the person to receive the peace lily if anything happened to her. She wrote that I should paint again. She wrote that I must stop believing I had to become perfect before becoming loved. And at the end, she wrote that forgiveness was not a grand speech, but a door left unlocked. I found her care home that same afternoon. The building stood behind a small garden flooded with daylight. When I entered her room, Noemi was sitting near the window, thinner than ever, the peace lily blooming beside her. She looked surprised, then relieved, as if some part of her had been waiting. I could not say all the things I had carried there. I only held her hand and cried. She cried too, quietly, without shame. The weeks that followed became the most painful and beautiful days of my life. I visited her after work. I brought sketchbooks. I painted small pictures of our apartment, the kitchen, the window, the orange bowl, the laundromat glowing in afternoon sun. Noemi would look at each painting as if I had brought her pieces of a world she was still part of. Some days she was strong enough to smile. Some days she only slept while I sat beside her, listening to the soft machines and the distant sound of birds outside. One afternoon, she asked me to promise that when she was gone, would not turn grief into a locked room. I promised, though I did not know how to keep it. She passed away at sunrise 3 days later, just as daylight began filling the curtains. There was no thunder, no dramatic storm, only a quiet golden morning, the kind she loved. Her hand was warm in mine until it wasn't. For months, I lived with her absence like a second shadow. But I kept the peace lily by the window. I painted every day. I started leaving small notes for strangers, then for neighbors, then for people at the clinic. Notes that said they mattered, that they were not a burden, that the world was better with them in it. Eventually, I painted a mural on the side wall of our old building, a blooming lily rising from cracked concrete, reaching toward the sun. People stopped to look at it. Some cried. Some took photos. A woman from the second floor told me she had been lonely for years and the mural made her feel seen. That was when I understood Noemi's final lesson. Kindness does not disappear when a person leaves. It changes hands. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Ancient Truth. Your small action may help this message reach someone who needs hope today. Special request, comment I believe in second chances if Noemi's letter moved you. I still live in that same apartment. The room is no longer empty. Sunlight comes in every afternoon, touching the walls, the floor, and the peace lily blooming beside the window. Sometimes, when the city grows loud and my heart grows tired, I read Noemi's letter again. And every time, I remember that a person can enter your life quietly, leave gently, and still change everything forever.